Hello and welcome to Balconem Baptist YouTube Devotional. Over the past several days we have journeyed together to the cross. This week is known as the Holy Week, the most significant week in the Christian Church's calendar. Today is Good Friday, the day that Jesus was crucified. On the Thursday, Jesus was denied, betrayed, and then arrested. Various illegal trials took place, during which Jesus was whipped and beaten and had a crown of thorns thrust upon his head. Pilate brought Jesus out to the people, hoping that they would want him released. But the people shouted for Jesus to be crucified. And Luke tells us what happens. In Luke chapter 23, verses 23 and 24. But the mob shouted louder and louder, demanding that Jesus be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate sentenced Jesus to die as they demanded. Then in verse 33, when they came to the place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross. And the criminals were also crucified, one on his right and the other on his left. The Roman soldiers did their job well. The nails were driven through the wrist to support the weight of the sagging body. For 6 hours, Jesus hung naked, covered with cuts and bruises, and a crude crown of thorns spiking his head, and every fibre of his body twitching in agony as his chest heaved great gulping breaths. Crucifixions were messy business. The Romans, who seem to have got hold of this idea of crucifixions from the Phoenicians in the Punic Wars, became experts at this most awful form of execution. They reserved it for the lower class in the empire, and in particular it was for the penalty for slaves. It was so degrading that it wasn't talked about in polite Roman society. And so there was Jesus, the innocent one, dying between two criminals. There were 3 words that Jesus said that are so important for us to understand and accept. John recorded the last words of Christ on the cross. He said in John chapter 19 verse 30, "It is finished. It is finished." And then he died. It is finished. When we compare the 4 Gospels, we find a most interesting thing. The other 3 do not tell us that Jesus said, "It is finished." But they do tell us that when he died with a great shout. On the other hand, John does not speak of this great shout, but does say that Jesus' last words were, "It is finished." The explanation is that the great shout and the words, "It is finished," are the one and the same thing. "It is finished" is one word in the Greek language, tetelestai, and Jesus died with a shout of triumph on his lips. He did not say it is finished in a weary kind of defeat. He said it as one who shouts with victory. He seems to be broken on the cross, but he knew that victory had been won. The word tetelestai is unfamiliar to us, but it was used by various people in everyday life in those days. For example, when a job was completed, the servant would say to their master, tetelestai, meaning that they have completed the job the master gave them to do. The Jewish people would bring their sacrifices to be offered. After the high priest examined it and then accepted it, he would say tetelestai, meaning it is perfect, it is accepted. To the merchant, when a person purchased something, the merchant would take the money and hand you the receipt that said tetelestai, meaning paid in full. The debt had been paid fully. When Jesus shouted out, "It is finished," to Telestai, he was declaring that the work he came to do was now finished. Max Lucado writes this: "The history-long plan of redeeming humanity was finished. The message of God to humanity was finished. The works done by Jesus as a man on earth were finished. The task of selecting and training followers was finished. The job was finished. The song had been sung. The blood had been poured. The sacrifice had been made. The sting of death had been removed. It was over." To Telestai. There's another word that has a very similar meaning: redeem. To redeem something is to pay that thing off. It is to clear the debt with payment. Well, the Bible writers refer to the work of Jesus on the cross as just this: a redeeming work where the penalties for our sins had been paid for in full. The Apostle Paul says this about Jesus in Ephesians chapter 1 verse 7. "In him we have the redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, in accordance with the riches of God's grace." Today, on this most significant day, we remember the death of Jesus and how he had completed his mission. The work of redemption is finished. Our debts have been paid for in full. To Telestai. In prayer right now, pause and reflect on the death of Jesus, his immense sacrifice, the love and grace of God, and what it means to you today. And so today, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favour and give you his peace.